on women and children. They created this. It's called the It's Not Right Project. So if you see me on my phone, this is just where my notes are, just so that I have it in front of me. So I will share my screen now. And yeah, if you have any questions at all, please just put them in the chat and I'll do the best I can to answer all the questions that you have at the end. We're going to be maybe a little bit pressed for time, but yeah, hopefully we'll get everything done. And if you guys again have questions, I'll try to answer them as quick as possible. So as I mentioned, this presentation was created by the Center of Education and Research on Children and Women, sorry. And so yeah, this is going to be talking about elder abuse, recognizing the signs, and kind of knowing what to do. So it's not about being the hero swooping in and saving the day. It's more about preventing isolation and really getting the conversation started around what is happening, how you can support, and just basically really stopping that isolation and being a good supportive ear. So today you'll learn about recognizing the warning signs of abuse, recognize ageism, respond safely and supportively, and the little things you can do to make a big difference, and finding help in the community. So you power, what is it? So you're a powerful being in the world. Most people just don't know it yet. So little things that you do and say has a big impact. So just think about a time that somebody has said something negative towards you, and how long did that really sit with you? How long did it impact you for? And then on the flip side, think about the last time somebody said something positive to you or did something positive for you. How much of an impact did that have? And do you think that they thought about it as long as you did? So sometimes we don't realize how much of an impact our words and our actions, how big of an impact they have. And so that's really important, especially right now with the current pandemic. We're very isolated as it is, and as we should physically be, but not socially. So there's a lot of different ways we can connect these days through social media, through telephone, through Zoom meetings like this. And so, yeah, so it's really important to stay connected. So your smallest action has an impact of some kind. So that's important to remember. And so let's look at what you can do to support older adults who may be experiencing abuse or neglect. I need to slow this down. And so you might be an older person yourself. You might be a care provider. You might be a volunteer. So these are just things that you can do no matter your role. You could even just be the neighbor of somebody who is older. And so we all have a role to play no matter who we are and what our role is. And so everyone has the right to be safe and free from abuse or neglect. And we have a shared responsibility to create safe, strong, and healthy communities. So people who experience abuse need support. So like I said, isolation is not good when it comes to those situations. So people who behave abusively are accountable for their actions. So it's up to them. It's not the fault of the person being abused. And unfortunately, people may not recognize that what they're doing and what they're saying is a form of abuse. So it may be done with the most loving intentions, but what it is doing is taking away the rights and freedoms of somebody, all due to somebody trying to help, trying to alleviate pressure when that is not welcome, if that makes sense. So yeah, neighbors, families, and friends can make a difference. So what can you do? So let's start with just talking about ageism and what it is in general. So it plays a big factor in abuse. So it's discrimination against. Yeah.
Sorry, your PowerPoint is not on. It's just like a white screen.
What? Oh man. Okay. What a day. Thank you for letting me know.
You're welcome.
I'm screen sharing. Let me try stopping it and starting it again. What about now? Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes? Whew. Okay, sounds good.
But it's minimized, so maybe put it in the presenter mode.
Yes, of course. So here's just kind of what we just went over. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so back to ageism. So plays a large factor in abuse. So it's discrimination against older adults because they're older. So this might look like somebody who's just mean to every older person that they meet just because of their own bias, because for whatever reason, really, it just any malicious intent. Or it could be as simple as, so say a family wants to go out for a big family hike and grandma wants to come, but this hike is 10 kilometers. There's lots of tripping hazards. Um, Maybe there's some caves to maneuver through or some rocks to climb or something. And so everyone in the family is kind of like, that might be a little bit risky. So they just flat out say, no, like we can't have you come. It's too risky. Well, how does that make grandma feel? Probably not very good. So instead of doing that, it's important to still create opportunities for them to participate. So maybe a different hike down a more accessible route, so that they still get the benefit of spending time with family. They're not feeling left out, things like that. So it could be, again, done with the best of intentions. They don't want to put their loved one into a risky situation. But there's really nothing done to allow them to have those rights and freedoms. And so ageism happens when you make up your mind about what a group of people are like because of their age. So we all have maybe some ageist attitudes that sometimes we need to check ourselves on. So for example, we're driving down the road, somebody's in front of us, and you hear a friend say in your passenger seat, oh my gosh, we're going so slow, it must be an old person driving. Well, that's not the case. I mean, I know in my life, my grandma drives like a maniac. She drives so fast all the time. And so it's not all older people are the same, just like no other person in any age demographic is the same. We're all different, we're all unique. And so it's important to check ourselves for those stereotypes that we might have. And so what do we know? So here are some statistics. So ageism is the most tolerated form of social prejudice. So 63% of seniors say that they have been treated unfairly or different because of their age. 79% of people agree that seniors are seen as less important, and 21% of people see older Canadians as a burden. Now, these stats are just mind-boggling. And this was done, I believe, in 2011. So hopefully things have changed by then. It's been a decade. Let's hope that's changed. But still, we can all just keep going forward with those stats in mind and think about how we can make sure that seniors still feel important, and they're not a burden. They have lots to bring to the table and things like that. And so ageism and abuse. So well-meaning family and friends sometimes push older adults to do things that they don't want to do. And so you might see that in maybe adult children, like forcing their parent to move into a smaller house, for example, because maybe they're sick of being the ones to maintain it, right? Maybe they have a really negative attitude about the whole experience, or because they figure that their older parent doesn't need that much space, or it's just too much for the older person to clean themselves or maintain, or maybe the stairs are an issue. So it's very important, instead of just to push them to do these things, have a conversation. That's the most important part, and make sure that the opinion and the input of the valuable person whose life is being affected has the biggest role to play in the decision-making process. And so let's talk about abuse. So keep in mind, as we're going through this, there may be some stuff that is triggering or that might kind of sit uneasy with you. So take care of yourself through this. And there are some, if you need to, feel free to just kind of step away from it, take a breather, come back. And I'll warn you if there's some other like troubling statistics or troubling topics as well. And so abuse is an equalizer. So we all struggle when abuse shows up in relationships of people we know and care about. So it's really hard for us to recognize our own ageist attitudes and things that we're doing as abuse. And it often happens due to a power imbalance of sorts. And so maybe that's 3 adult children against the older parent. And so there's an imbalance there. And it can be really hard for us to see it happening and know what to do. So hopefully this presentation gives you an idea for definitely just to start with that. And so what is abuse of older adults? So harm caused to older adults by someone who limits or controls their rights and freedoms. So the older adult is unable to freely make choices because they are afraid of being hurt, humiliated, left alone, or the relationship ending. And so abuse is not just impolite or rude behavior. It is abuse when one person uses their power or influence over someone else to take advantage of them or to control the older adult. So neglect of older adults who cannot manage their own is also abuse. So it's kind of two different extremes, taking advantage of them and using and controlling them versus just not supporting them and neglecting them and their needs is kind of on the other side. So we want to be in the middle where we allow our older adults to have autonomy over their life, while not neglecting some of the things as well. And so domestic violence is included. So here again are some stats. So if this is upsetting for you, you can just mute for a little bit. And just to take care of yourself. So domestic violence accounts for 1/4 of all violent crime in Canada. Older populations over the age of 55 have the lowest rates of domestic violence. However, close to 3,000 individuals over the age of 55 reported spousal violence in 2011. So that's a large number. And older women are most often the victim and less likely to seek help than younger women. Sorry, because maybe they think, oh well, like I've dealt with this for this long. Or what am I going to do? Right? So it makes it really tricky. And so abuse means a power imbalance. So abuse is misuse of power. It can make the person experiencing it feel small, alone, and powerless, especially when they're being isolated as well. And isolation often plays, again, a large role in abuse. So the more abuse that's happening, the more isolated the person is. And because maybe they feel shame or guilt because maybe they have told somebody about it at one point and their friend responded with, oh, well, they just need a swift kick in the butt or something like that, or you need to put them in their place. And maybe that just kind of closed off that conversation for them. And so then they further get isolated as well. And so what is abusive behavior? So it can be raging and terrifying, but it can also be verbal, physical, financial, sexual, spiritual, and neglect as well. Or it can be more subtle and hard to see. So maybe they say like out loud and you can see that they're controlling someone's every move, or it just may be really challenging to see. So here are just some warning signs. And as you're kind of going through this, think also of maybe some other warning signs as well. Maybe something that you've seen even in a movie or something that you've seen out and about, something that just kind of raised a little alarm in your head that made you think, that just doesn't sit right with me. So one example is, if I tell you I'm being abused, believe me. So that's a huge piece, is validating the person's emotions and feelings and validating their experience. Let them know that they are believed and that you're there for them is a huge piece. But yeah, back to the point of warning signs. If they tell you, that's it. That's probably the biggest warning sign you can get. So if they become depressed or withdrawn, or they seem kind of on edge or fearful as well, that might indicate maybe some violence or maybe different forms of abuse as well. Maybe with COVID and the pandemic and lockdowns and stuff like that, they might not be able to physically attend social events or churches or things like that. So maybe what that might look like in this day and age might be they might stop the regular phone calls. Maybe you and your friend call every Tuesday at noon and you kind of have coffee over the phone together. So maybe they stop doing those kind of things. Or someone might suddenly move in with them, whether that's someone that they know or someone that they don't know. And just kind of keeping an eye out for warning signs in those cases. So if it's someone that they don't know or you don't know and it's kind of just a weird situation, that's a warning sign. Or if maybe an adult child moves in, or adult son or daughter, or whoever moves in with them as well, keeping an eye on that as far as warning signs. That's not to mean hover, but just keeping an eye out for the warning signs. So signs of neglect, such as no food in the house, or maybe their phone is cut off, or things are suddenly disappearing from their house, or they have injuries that they can't explain. So you see maybe a big bruise on their arm and you ask them about it, and you see that their response is kind of off-putting. And so, yeah, those are the opportunities that raise, or the signs that raise the bell or ring the bell in your mind that may tell you that, okay, something's off here. What next, right? And we'll talk about what to do after you kind of have that warning sign and what you can do. So here's some more warning signs. So controlling behavior. So making all the decisions for somebody without asking. Or without valuing their input. So even if they are putting in input, it's like they're not even there. Um, there might be isolation from family and friends, threats of violence or abandonment, complete disregards for privacy, reading or withholding mail. So maybe if it's a form of financial abuse, maybe somebody is taking their credit card and not letting them see their credit card statements so that they don't know how much of their money is being spent, and handling all of the money, or locks on the outside of doors. So that makes you wonder, why is the lock on the outside of the door as well? So that's another set of signs. So who is at risk of abuse? So it can happen at any age to any person, no matter who they are, where they are, it could happen. And so why are some people more at risk? So people who are abused are often isolated. So again, during this pandemic, everyone is very isolated. So it's important to keep in touch with your loved ones, call friends, make check-ins, things like that. And so somebody may be isolated because of their culture or language. Maybe they're a newcomer to Canada and there's a language barrier. They can't communicate with other people here because English isn't a language that they have learned yet. Or maybe the person abusing them might be keeping them away from people who can help. Or maybe abuse escalates, and the more it does, the more isolated they become. So those are some examples of people who are at more risk. And so some of the most common risk factors are depression, previous abuse as a child, youth, or adult, and being female. And so some other risk factors as well are deteriorating health situations where one partner cares for the other. And so, I mean, that could be challenging too, because maybe the other person needs to be taken care of as well. And so again, it might just be neglect because they physically can't. And so again, that's an example of something not being malicious, but it's just kind of, that's how it is. And there's still something that it is still something to be addressed. And so addictions sometimes play a role in abuse, or living with somebody who is dependent on you as well, or cognitive impairments as well. And so there's some different intersections of discrimination. So LGBTQ seniors may face social discrimination due to their age as well as their sexual orientation or gender identity. There's an ongoing legacy of the residential schools and colonization. So Indigenous people are 6 times more likely to be killed. 20% of trans seniors have been physically or sexually abused for being trans. And these are all really troubling stats. And I can think of an example of a senior that I knew who transitioned from male to female. And so she used to, prior to the transition, she was volunteering all over the community, and helping combat senior isolation. The work she did was phenomenal. And nobody had known that she was transgender until she officially came out, started dressing as her identified gender, and so once she came out, there was huge backlash from all of the people that she had been volunteering for, dedicating her time for, and so that was really sad to see. And so that's one other form that you might see in the community, is that people are not open to it, and that people could be blatantly rude as well about it. And so, yeah, so there's another example of that happening. And so women with disabilities are 4 times more likely to be sexually assaulted, and Indigenous women make up 21% of all homicides in Canada. And so who behaves abusively towards older adults? So it's not always just the monsters that we may picture in our head, people with malicious intent, but it could be people we know. And so who behaves abusively towards older adults? So most often it's family members. So adult children or grandchildren, other people could be relatives and friends, unpaid or paid caregivers, landlords, financial advisors, or anyone in a position of power, authority, or trust. And so gender and abuse. So as men age, they experience abuse more often than younger men, and violence against older women is 22% higher than older men. Women are more likely to be killed by their spouse. Men are more likely to be killed by an acquaintance, and trans seniors experience stigma and other forms of discrimination. So knowing that and these statistics kind of helps you to understand who is at a larger risk as you're kind of going about your day in your community and things like that, as you're looking for these warning signs. And so what makes you feel uncomfortable? Watch for warning signs. So this is a case example of an adult child who moves home with his mom, who is retired. Seemingly she does not have a job. She's retired and living off of retirement funds. And so he lost his job. He's moving back home just until he gets to his feet. Well, that didn't work. All right.
Are you going to be comfortable in the basement?
Yeah, there's plenty of room, Mom. Besides, your granddaughter will never be home. You're a lifesaver, Mom. I don't know what I would have done without you.
I'm sure you're going to find another job in no time.
You mind if I watch a movie? By the way, your bank card was rejected at the gas station today. It was really embarrassing.
What are you talking about?
I went to fill up my car and it wouldn't go through. It must be overdrawn or something. Better hope your check comes in this week and you're not going to be able to get your prescriptions refilled. What are you doing?
I can't get used to the damp downstairs.
Oh, try another blanket, Mom. We're boiling up here.
I would have wished you would have asked me before you moved me into the basement.
Why? Do you have to be on my back, Mom? It's too dark and dingy down there. I get depressed, you know that. Complete your puzzles down there as well as you can up here.
What's for dinner, Grams? I'm starving.
Okay, so as you watch that, you definitely kind of saw how in the beginning it was very sweet and innocent. He was moving home. You could see that that Carla looked a little bit uncomfortable, like not fully ready for her adult son to move in with her, but she wanted to help him just until he could get back on his feet after losing a job. And so you could see the progression. So it started off fine and well, but after 6 months, he had kind of really started invading her privacy. She was trying to do puzzles in her living room. He came in, put his alcoholic beverage on her puzzle, kind of booted her out of her seat by kind of just sticking his butt in there, and like not really having any mind towards her privacy or the fact that that is her space, that is her time. So, and then you also see that he was using her credit card and that it declined, and she was wondering why. Like, how often has he been using this credit card? And emotionally, you definitely saw the effect that was having on Carla. So you could see that she was confused and couldn't understand where all her money was gone, and he was focusing on his own feeling. Like, it was embarrassing, even though if she doesn't have the money, she can't get her prescription. So That was huge. And then also when I guess at some point he had moved mom downstairs in her own house and focused more on his emotions and said, you know, I get depressed, mom, I can't be in the basement, it's too dark, it's too damp, even though physically you could see the impact that it was having on her. And so some of the risk factors with this situation is that Michael is dependent and he's unemployed, so he relies on her financially for sure. They are living together. He suffers from depression. Alcohol abuse increases the risk, and this is an escalating situation. So we saw it over the span of roughly like a year and a half. And also the granddaughter moved in. So his daughter moves in and she says, Grandma, like, when are you making dinner? I'm so hungry. So suddenly she's being put into a larger caregiving role, where she also has to take care of her granddaughter as well. And assumably the son, she has to make dinner for him as well. And she was on her cell phone the whole time too, so it makes you wonder who is paying for that phone bill. Phone bills can be really expensive, especially for smartphones and things like that. So that's another big thing to think about. So we saw abusive behavior by moving his mom downstairs, taking and stealing her money. Because clearly she seemed kind of unsure of where all her money went. So definitely he was taking it without her permission or without her knowledge. He had a complete disregard for her privacy by kind of bumping into her space, saying, like trying to watch a movie there, shoving her over, things like that. And then and reading her mail, I don't remember seeing that, but it probably was in there if it's on this list. But anyways, ageist attitude. So he feels entitled to mom's money, her home, her time. So her time to take care of them, her home. He moved her into the basement. He's spending all her money, which puts her at risk because can she afford her mortgage? Can she afford her prescriptions? Things like that. And so mom's wants and needs are not important to her or to the son at all. She says that I'm damp, it's cold downstairs, things like that. And he's like, oh, I don't care, basically. We're boiling up here. I can't be downstairs. It's too depressing, things like that. So that was just not a good situation at all for Carla to be in. And so different power imbalances have many sources. So from a society perspective, the women are all often seen as the caregivers and the caretakers. So Carla was expected to kind of caregive both the son and the granddaughter. Ageism, so the younger people's needs are being put first and they're being seen as more important. So Michael is putting his needs before his mother's. And ageism, so older adults are a burden and need help. So Michael may believe that he's helping his mom by living there in one way or another. And you might see that a lot as well, when adult children might go in and take over the finances for their parents. They might kind of feel like they're doing them a solid, they're helping them out, they're taking that stress away from them. But in the same breath, is that something that the older person wants, the parent wants? Are they getting that input? Is that just kind of taking away the autonomy? If the adult children are taking away the financial management piece, is the older person able to go spend their money on random things that they might want? If they have the money for it, maybe they won't be able to go buy their coffee when they go out for coffee with a friend or something like that. So there's just a bunch of different pieces to that. And so most likely Carla is worried about her son and her granddaughter's future. Carla loves her son, Michael loves his mom. So that makes it also a really sticky situation, is the love there, the fear of losing that relationship by kind of putting her foot down maybe. So Carla might feel some shame. She might not want anybody to know. And so abusive behavior is common, and they might not see, and people might not see that what they're doing is abusive. So Michael might justify his behavior in a variety of different ways because he might not see that it is in fact abuse. So how can you tell that maybe some of the things that you're doing to other people could be a form of abuse, or might just be some sort of mistreatment of them, or just and not honoring their own rights and freedoms to take care of themselves and to kind of be autonomous? And so if the person is afraid of you, that's a big sign. you would need to check yourself with that for sure. If you're making all of the decisions for the older person in your life, that's not a good sign, especially if you're not asking if they want to have a role in that, if you're not asking for their input, or if they're trying to give input but you're ignoring them. Those are big warning signs to check in with yourself on. If you think you know what is best for another adult just because they're older, that's also a time for you to reflect. And if you take their money or possessions, yeah. Or so maybe like if you're a grandchild and you know that your grandma is always willing to give you $20 whenever you need it for whatever reason, or you know that every time you go to grandma she gives you $20 or she gives you $50, and so you make it a habit to constantly go to grandma's just because you want that money. At that point, that's when you would want to definitely again check yourself, because what happens when grandma runs out of money, right? So remember that you are a powerful being. Your every action has an impact. So let's talk about support. So we talked about a lot of the bad stuff. So let's start talking about the good stuff and what to do with this information. So it's really a journey, learning to overcome your hesitation to help, and trying not to just be the hero to dive in and help. The most important part is just to be truly supportive. Don't be pushy. Don't be controlling. Don't tell them exactly what they need to do to get out of whatever situation they're in. It's important to just have the conversation with the person you are concerned about and value what they want to do with their own life. They are the expert on their life. And so for your journey to support, sink it is a great little saying just to help you remember. So the S in sink it is see it, the N is name it, and the C is check it. So seeing it, notice when you feel uncomfortable, learn about the issue, and recognize the warning signs. So when that little bell in your head screams something's not right here, acknowledge that feeling, and that's the first step. Naming it is the second one. So overcome your hesitation to help, name the warning sign, but just the facts. So for example, say you're having tea or coffee at an older person's house, and maybe their adult son or daughter is living with them. They come downstairs, dig through their parents' purse, pull out $100, let's say. They pull out $100 and they just leave. There's no conversation that goes on. So that's what you see, and the warning bell goes off. You look at that and you could say, they just stole out of your wallet and you're not going to do anything about it. That's not helpful. That's not helpful at all. What you would want to do is approach it carefully, just naming the facts without any judgment. So you might say something like, I just noticed that your daughter took money out of your purse. And then that gives them the opportunity to open up about what happened. So maybe they might start saying, oh, well, yeah, they do that. And they used to ask, but not really anymore. Or on the flip side, you might learn that, yeah, every Tuesday is shopping day. So the adult son or daughter comes down, grabs the money for their half of their parents' half of the groceries maybe, and then they go do the groceries, bring back, and it's totally okay. So opening the conversation allows for you to learn more about what that warning bell was trying to tell you. And so you might want to say, I'm worried about you. So talk to the older adult or somebody that you trust. And yeah, it's also important not to be judgmental about it. So if you were to say, oh my gosh, they just stole, they might become defensive because they love that person. They have a close relationship with that person otherwise. And so they may be like, oh, they didn't steal. And then they become defensive, and it really closes off that conversation. So you want to keep the conversation open. And so check it. Are you okay? What can I do to help? So after maybe you said, I noticed that your adult son took $100 out of your wallet. And then they say, oh yeah, well, they've been doing that a lot lately. They used to ask, but not really. That's when you can say, are you okay? Like, how do you feel about that? And that really opens the door for them to kind of tell you if they want to, but don't force them to talk about it, just let them know that the door is open. If they don't want to talk about it, you can just say, okay, that's fine. Just know I'm here if you need anything at all. So check your assumptions, make sure to ask questions and not jump to conclusions, and check with the person you're worried for. And if it is something that puts anybody at immediate risk of serious injury, that is when you could, of course, call 911 or contact authorities in one way or another. And so the SYNC-IT goal is to open the door for support, not to be the hero and come in and save the day and fix everything for them. It's to be there to support them while they decide what they want to do about it. And so here's an example of opening the door for conversation. So there's, like I gave the example of the wallet, this is Francesca trying to talk to Carla about kind of what her son is doing. Start it. Oops. Where's my mouse? There we go.
How are things going with your son being home? Oh, I feel badly for him. He's having such a hard time of it. He and his daughter moved upstairs on the weekend. And where does that leave you? In the spare room. In the basement? I am sorry, but that is going too far. You still cater to his every whim when what he really needs is a swift kick in the pants. If you don't put your foot down, he's never going to leave that couch. Never mind look for a job.
So looking at Carla's face and the fact that she didn't say anything, would you say the door is open or closed for further conversation? Probably closed. What Francesca said, victim blamed Carla, definitely said, Francesca said, all you do is cater to his every whim. You need to put your foot down or he's not going to do anything, which definitely makes it seem like it's Carla's fault for letting him kind of rule the roost at home. And so that puts the blame on Carla, that immediately says, Carla, this is what you have to do. When that's not really opening the conversation, that's just quickly closing it with a slam that says you need to do better. And that's not what we want to do at all, because that's not helpful and that's not a way to make anybody feel good about their situation or want to confide in you ever again. And so that right there would isolate them even further. And again, isolation, the more isolated a person is, the further the risk of abuse. And so do you think that Francesca genuinely cares about her friend and wants to help? Probably. And that's why we need to reflect on ourselves and how we respond, because we might be outraged, because that's the whole situation that Carla is in is absolutely outraging. So we might find ourselves wanting to react that way, but we have to just take a breath and kind of remember to sync it, right? And so let's see Francesca try it again and try to kind of end the start the conversation.
How are things going with your son being home? Oh, I feel badly for him. He's having such a hard time of it. He and his daughter moved upstairs on the weekend. And where does that leave you? In the spare room. In the basement? I'm worried about you. Your life has changed so much. Are you okay?
So when watching that response, you kind of see the compassion. You see that she kind of validates that what she's been going through is a lot. And she asks, are you okay? And in Carla's face and her shoulders, you can see the weight being lifted off already. So Francesca sees the trouble that Carla's having, and sees that the house is a mess and asks a question. She names her concern. She says, I'm worried about you. She listens without judgment. She makes eye contact, and she, of course, they seem to be a really close friendship. So she's able to kind of give her like a little pat, adjust her shirt a little bit just to kind of close up or whatever she was doing. But you could tell that the contact was welcomed, it was done with love, that kind of thing. And she checks and asks the question, are you okay? So that's the biggest piece. You could see that Carla seemed ready to talk about it at that point. And that's what we want to do. We want to open that conversation. So what will happen next? Based on the look on Carla's face, she looks like she might be ready to talk about it. She might be ready to confide in Francesca, and together Francesca can help support Carla in making the decision, not make the decision for her, and not jump in to save the day. She's just being there to listen to Carla. And so ultimately, Carla gets to decide what happens next. And so most importantly, what does Francesca do? She interrupts the isolation. So as I said with the last response, she just said, this is what you need to do. It's your fault he's acting this way because you cater to his every need. You need to do better, which would isolate Carla, probably thinking, oh, she's right. This is embarrassing because I'm not going to do anything about it, maybe. And so that might further isolate Carla. The conversation's closed off. She probably won't want to talk to Francesca about it again because she knows she's just going to get that same response, or an I told you so. This time around with response 2, she interrupts the isolation by letting Carla talk about it, and really supporting Carla. And so interrupting the isolation will help the situation huge. So as I've said a million times in this presentation, isolation is a risk factor for abuse and also a result of abuse that becomes deeper and more profound as the abuse escalates. And so simply put, all of this is mostly to say we just want to be there for people. We want to listen to them. We want to help get them out of isolation when they're experiencing it, so that they know who to go to, know how they can be supported and whatnot. And it increases safety and provides support. And so it isn't just when people are experiencing or causing abuse who are isolated. It could be the neighbors who are watching it. They might not know what to do, and they're sitting alone with their fears and the concerns. So how to handle it. So you don't have to solve the person's problem, as I've mentioned. Instead, you can just be their support, their listening ear, their kind of touch base, safe place. So you want to make sure you're doing it safely. So don't have this conversation when the person who is engaging in abusive behavior is present. So that wouldn't be a safe situation because things could escalate. You want to do it when they're not around, so that way everyone stays safe, and you want to do it respectfully. So again, not making assumptions, not being judgmental, not just stomping your feet and demanding that they need to do something about it, those kind of things. You want to be both safe and respect about the situation. And listen carefully. And again, if they don't want to talk about it, as long as they know the door is open for that conversation, that's the most important piece. So start with the heart, show that you care, tell them you're worried about them, come from a place of love. And so don't underestimate your powerful drive to solve it. You're going to want to jump in there, save the day. You might think in your head about all the different ways that you can fix it, but it's not up to you. All you can do is be the support person instead of trying to tell them what to do. You're supposed to be there for the other person while they're making the decision for themselves, because it's their right and freedom to be able to choose what they are doing with their life. And by going in and solving it, it's disrespectful because it assumes the other person is not capable. It's a form of victim blaming. But at the end of the day, it's also understandable because you care. You want to be able to save the day if you can. But that might take away their autonomy. So you need to be kind of aware of it. And the best way to help with it is to be their support person and acknowledge it, name it, show your concern, and let them know that they can trust you and that you are there for them. And so the journey steps for sync it. So again, see it, notice when something makes you feel right, name it. So talk to someone, the older adult first. So what was the warning sign? Just name it, not judgmentally, and check it. So ask them if they're okay, ask them if they want to talk about it, and come from a place of love and compassion. And so be prepared for disclosure. So if someone tells you that they are being abused, you can say, I believe you. It's not your fault. I'm worried about your safety, and I will support you in whatever decision you want to make. And so if you are the one being hurt or being threatened, tell someone you trust that can help. Be the person that we've been encouraging, or I've been encouraging people to do this whole time. So you are the expert in your own life, and you are the best person to decide what you can do to set limits and increase your safety. It is your life. You're the expert on your own life. That's the most important part. And make a safety plan that includes where you can go in an emergency and what you will take with you. So a safety plan might look like, it might come from having these sync it conversations where you open the door for conversations. You ask, are you okay? The conversation's open, and then you say, okay, let's make a safety plan. When I call you, that means something, I'm not safe. So if I call you and I say, hey, what was the brand of pickles that you put in your pickle salad? Maybe that's the phrase, or choose a safe word or something that you can do to let them know that you're not safe and you need help, and then you can choose the next step. So is your friend that you called going to call the authority? Are they the ones that are going to come pick you up? Like what's that gonna look like? Plan for a safety plan that works best for you, your situation, and your circumstance. And what might you take with you? So maybe you'll have an emergency bag that you leave at your friend's house so that in case of an emergency you need to run out fast or get out fast, that stuff is there and available for you. And so if you were being abused, how would you want to be treated? So that's a critical piece too. So really putting yourself in the opposite shoes, thinking about how you would want to be treated, how you would want to be talked to. And so that goes along with everything. So if we're thinking about financial abuse, if you were getting older and maybe your adult children came in and was like, we need to take care of your finances, we're going to take care of them for you, and walked away with it without letting you have any input on it, and that's not something you were okay with. So think about what you would want in that situation. Who might you trust? Who might you confide in? Things like that. And how would you like it if that was the situation, if you're thinking about your own behavior towards older adults in your life? So yeah, it's really important to be reflective and think about things like that. And so here are just some general resources across Ontario. So Ontario 211 is a great resource. They have a website. You can give them a call. They can give you a resource in your area. So they might be able to provide a resource close to North Bay. You can talk to your doctor, nurse, things like that. Seniors Info Line is another one on here. Elder Abuse Ontario is on here. Support and helpline specifically. So Senior Safety Line, FemAid, and Talk for Healing is specifically for Aboriginal women. And so just to wrap this up, everything you do has an impact. It makes a difference. So think, what kind of difference do you want to make, especially in the current pandemic we're in? Everyone is isolated. So what difference do you want to make to try to combat that? So staying connected. Who do you want to stay connected to? Things like that. And so we are all part of a community. So we all kind of have a role to play and to recognize these warning signs, no matter who you are, where you are. And so final thoughts, you don't have to be a hero or be the one to fix the situation. Caring about the people around us, paying attention to them, and when there are signs of trouble and responding appropriately can make a huge difference. The little things count. So those sync it conversations are huge, opening the door for that conversation and remembering that you have the power. And so with information, you can be a supporter. So pay attention to warning signs around older people in your life or around your own life. Be an advocate. So tell people about the whole sync it process, things like that. And all this stuff is just kind of from the train the trainer part. So yeah, here's the organization or the programming that kind of created this presentation that I am presenting to you. And so if you have more information, or if you would like more information on it, www.itsnotright.ca has all the background information on this stuff. And another thing is that they would love your feedback. So Francine will be sending out a Survey Monkey. If you could complete that if you get the link, you just click the link and then you can just kind of go through it. You don't have to, of course. And yeah.
Great, thanks a lot. That was a great presentation, Brianne. Thank you so much. I did put the survey in the chat bar as well just now. So if everybody clicks on the chat bar, you can find the survey there. So if everybody can take a few minutes and click on it if they have the time, or I can email it to you as well. Again, I apologize for the difficulties with the links for this presentation in the beginning. For those of you who have missed out on the beginning of it, I will email you the recording personally, and it will be up. It will be uploaded on Facebook. Brianne, do you know if I have permission from the creators of this?
I would imagine so. I will double check with them. I'll email them right after this meeting here.
Yes.
But I would imagine so.
Okay, but y'all have to have their permission first, though.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but I will personally email the ones that missed the beginning of it, just because for the mishap of the beginning of the presentation.
Yeah.
So if anybody has any questions for Brianne about the presentation, there is a chat bar at the bottom that you can ask her any questions.
I'll do my best to answer.
Give it a few minutes, Brianne, to see if anybody has any questions.
Sounds good. Sorry if I talked a little bit fast. I was a little worried about time, but we made it.
No, you did perfect. You did great with your presentations. Okay. Well, I think we can call it a day. I think this was really great. Thank you again. And it's nice and sunny out there, looks like. So I hope everybody enjoys this nice, beautiful sunny day. And take care, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, take care. Thank you, guys.
Bye.